Alright, you and I, we ride side by side, so keep shining, y'all, keep shining.
And we are live. All right, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Experience the People's Podcast. I'm JL, the Anti-Guru. I'm your host, and it is Monday. And tonight, guys, I have a special guest. Let me lower the music, and we're going to jump right into it. Like I said, tonight, I've got a special guest. If I learn how to talk tonight, guys, y'all know me. I have trouble sometimes. I have Pastor Nathan Mumford. He is the pastor of Mount Calvary Holy Church of Winston-Salem. I'm going to give you a little short bio, and then we're going to jump right into this interview. You guys, this is going to be really good. Pastor Mumford is a native of Richmond, Virginia. He graduated cum laude from Winston-Salem State University, SU, where he received his Bachelor of Science degree in Economics and Finance, and then earned his MBA from American International University. One of the things I want guys to know, when I was reading up on him, it said here, Pastor Mumford actually accepted Christ at age 4, but he said it took him a little while to get it all together. But he realized that he had a call placed on his life in the ministry by the time he was a teenager. So, after graduating from Winston-Salem State, he permanently relocated here to Winston-Salem and joined Mount Calvary Holy Church, where he is now the senior pastor. Pastor Mumford is also a husband and father of 3 beautiful children, and we appreciate you coming on tonight, Pastor. I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Uh-oh, look like you froze. Well, we got a little technical difficulty. Uh-oh, we look like we lost him. Well, hold on a minute, guys. You know, nothing ever works the way we want it to work. Anything made by a man. All right, looks like he's popping back in.
All right, I don't know what happened. Everything just
had a little technical difficulties there. You know, everything made by a man, we can't depend on it 100%. I'm sure you can agree with that. But I was just saying, right. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and join us tonight. We're going to be talking about you and your ministry, and find out more about what's going on at Mount Calvary. So, Pastor, I got a couple of questions. We're going to just jump right into it. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people want. What inspired or led you to pursue a career in ministry? Can you hear me?
Wow. So I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. You're like me. You pause before you speak. I understand. Go ahead.
You know, you got to think before you get it out. You know, got to make sure you don't say nothing that'll do some damage. But yeah, so my call to ministry was one of those things. In the Bible, God talks to Jeremiah and said, "Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew thee. And before you were born, I sanctified thee and I ordained thee." I feel like I have that type of calling on my life. I'm a first-generation preacher in my family. I just grew up. My mom always took me to church, and so I was always fascinated by the preacher. And, even as a little boy, I would stand on my grandmother's porch, and, she lives in inner city Richmond, Oakwood Avenue, a good city block in Churchill. And I would be preaching to the birds and squirrels. I don't know what I was saying, but I just was always fascinated with that. And, as I got older, that calling was confirmed several ways in my life, as a young boy and then as a teenager. And ultimately, as a teenager, I knew that this was what God had placed me on this earth to do. And then my early 20s, we officially started our ministry.
Outstanding. So tell me, how has your understanding of your call evolved over time? Because you're a little bit past 20 now.
Oh, yeah, I'm a little bit past 20. So, of course, at first it starts off as you're just wanting to be a preacher, right? Just wanting to preach. And, as a young teenager, I knew that's what I was called to do. And it hit me probably in my early 20s, I would say, in college, when I started doing the Fellowship of Christian Athletes for on campus there. I started teaching Bible study there. I think I was about 20, 21 years old. And I'm like, this is more than just a call to preach. I have a call to lead people because there's a difference between a preacher and a pastor. So I not only felt the call to preach, but I felt the call to lead, to mentor people, to help people grow in their gifts and in their callings and in their lives. I think one of the things I believe that God has placed on my life is to help people recognize their purpose and then to walk into their purpose, to help push them and do all I can to coach them up, to help them get to what God has called them to get to.
Okay. So how do you perceive the intersection of your personal gifts and talents and passions with your call to ministry? I know you have a background in finance and whatnot, but I know you also can sing a little bit. I've heard you sing.
Yeah, a little bit, not as well as I used to, but yeah. So that's singing is actually how I got started. Arts is kind of passion of mine as well. My family, we're my brother, sister, the artsy people. My grandfather actually sung in a quartet group, so I grew up around music of all types, not just gospel, but jazz and R&B and hip hop and that. And so that has always kind of kept me. One of the things that has kept me in church
Mhm.
is music. And actually, one of the reasons why I joined Mount Calvary was because of the music.
Okay.
Before I heard Pastor Hanschel at the time uh, open his mouth, it was the music that drew me in. And so,
Mhm.
music has always been a passion of mine, and that is how a lot of ways that I express myself in worship and other ways. And so that gift, along with I believe, just a natural ability to lead um, has helped me a lot, and over time and develop into the various leadership roles that I've had within not only the church but in the public sector as well, private sector, I should say, in my career, and even in sports. I grew up always playing sports. I played football, that was my passion. I played baseball. I played basketball every once in a while. I ran track one time. It only took one time for me to know that wasn't what God called me to do. Um, but I think a combination of that and understanding people looking up to me for leadership, for guidance, and understanding the importance of camaraderie and all of that as well has helped me translate that into my professional career as a finance manager as well as my pastoral career, understanding that this isn't a one man show. Nobody gets to where they're going by themselves.
No
And
doubt.
so that has really, always been something that has been, a driving force for me, making sure connecting the right people, getting the right people involved, bringing people along the journey to help get to wherever the destination is.
Wow, that's outstanding. So, can you describe any significant experiences or moments of confirmation in your journey to the ministry? Anything that you think of that really stood out to like, this is where I need to go and this is confirmation?
Wow. I think so. My first time ever being asked to speak, it was a youth revival at my home church in Richmond, Virginia, New Deliverance Evangelistic Church. The founder is the late Bishop Gerald Glenn, and current pastor is his wife, Mother Marcita Glenn. And he gave me my first opportunity to preach at a youth revival. And as I was studying the text, to preach the text, I was like, oh, this is what I'm called to do. I'm called to dive into the scripture, to put this stuff together. And I remember first sermon I preached, what is your remedy? It's preaching about the issue, the woman with the issue of blood.
Oh man.
Probably look back on it now, probably wasn't that great of a sermon.
Ah,
But even in that preparation process, and then Pastor Wade Lungy, who was one of the ministers at the time at the church, helped me in the preparation process. Excuse me, and it just pricked me. It's like fuel in my tank. It's like something that gets me up in the morning, and that every time I've had to preach, it's always been like that for me. It's the light that ignites my fire, and really gets me out of bed in the morning because I know that's what God has called me to do.
Right, right. And I don't know if I told you this. I had this was when I first got saved. I had probably been saved maybe 3 or 4 years. And when you first get saved, you're on fire and you want to spread the good news. And I was always a studious person. My mother was a teacher. We grew up reading books, and when I started reading the Bible, I just digested it, and I've committed lots of it, not all of it, to memory. And people would say, "Well, you speak so well, and you should be in the pulpit." So I went and talked to my pastor at the time, and when he explained all the ins and outs to me, it kind of cooled my heels. I mean, I do not envy you in your position, sir. I mean, it is an awesome responsibility. And but I do enjoy talking to people about God and telling them scripture. Just like today, I was talking with a guy, piggybacking off of your sermon not this Sunday, but Sunday past, about how we speak. And then there used to be a T-shirt out. I'm a Christian, but I cuss a little. Well, that doesn't sit. It never sat well with me. I know it doesn't sit well with you. I mean, if we don't change, and words are powerful.
Absolutely.
To me, it gives you the ability to just, like, I've heard people say, "Well, God's still working on me." I'm like, okay, well, God might be doing some work, but what work are you doing?
Right.
And
right.
like I told this guy, he's like, "Well, sometimes, man, you get mad." And I said, "Well, you can get mad, but there are so many words in the dictionary. I mean, I always used to say, people who cuss have limited vocabularies. That's why they do it."
And that's true. I believe the same thing. If that's the first thing you revert to, you go read a book to expand your vocabulary.
Yeah, definitely.
There are better words that you can use. Now, I understand, people get hot and angry in the moment. I get that. And sometimes, you feel that that's appropriate. But yeah, I think, for me, one of the reasons you said, the first question you asked, and I kind of paused a little bit before I answered, is because I've been in a situation where I spoke too soon and it did damage.
Yeah.
And so, even when I'm upset, even when I'm angry, I think it's important to really be slow to speak because words have power. Words can hurt.
Yeah.
We grew up, our teachers and parents told us sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's a lie.
That's a lie.
Words hurt more than the sticks and the stones sometimes.
Definitely.
Because, we God exemplifies the power of speaking. The earth is here because he spoke.
Yeah.
He just spoke a word and it formed the whole earth. And we have that same power. We're created in his image.
Yes.
The Bible tells us in multiple places to speak things. Speak those things that be not as though they were. Ask anything in my name and it shall be given. We open up our mouth and speak. That has power.
Yeah.
We have the power to bind and to loose. Life and death in the power of the tongue. We have the power to bind and to loose with our mouth.
Yeah. And like I told this guy, I said, the best advice I can give you is, before you speak or before you act, just think, would God be pleased with this? Would he be pleased with me acting this way? Would he be pleased with me saying this? And it kind of took him aback because I don't think he ever really thought about that. I think he was like a lot of us do. We think in ourselves and don't always think, first of all, what these words are going to do to somebody, and how God is going to view you when you're destroying. You can literally destroy people with words, like you said. That's outstanding. One other question, though. How do you discern between your own desires and God's leading in your ministry decisions?
Wow. Prayer. You have to be a pastor, really a leader in any capacity. You have to be a person of prayer. And so oftentimes, I made decisions, especially major decisions, in prayer. And then the other thing that I've learned in my life is God will always confirm His word, and so that's one way I know that God is leading in a particular direction is when I get confirmation after confirmation.
Right.
And typically I wait for that before I move,
Right.
unless it's something urgent that I feel like God is instantly giving me something to do, to say, to pivot in a different direction, particular direction. I like to wait for confirmation um, to move on certain things because I've done it before where I've gone, I'll say, ahead of God,
Mm-hmm.
and it backfired. It
Right.
doesn't work, and so always just heeding His voice and making sure everything is prayed up, and looking for that confirmation, like Gideon, throw your fleece out, make sure that this is what God is saying do. Um, Even when I took this assignment as pastor of the church, I've been there for 10 years at the time, 10, 11 years at the time. I was the assistant pastor. Our former pastor, Bishop Hatcher, was grooming me to pastor somewhere because he knew that that was my calling and that was, um, what God had planned me on this earth to do. But even before taking this assignment, I didn't just run into, oh, this is my opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I took a minute and prayed and asked God to confirm it and talked to several people about it and allow God to use them to confirm or deny, what I thought the Lord was how I thought the Lord was leading me. And so, like even in this decision in pastoring Mount Calvary, God had to confirm that for me.
Right.
And so
Well, you
that's
answered my other. I was going to ask. Have you faced any doubts or challenges along the way, and how do you overcome them? But I'm pretty sure you're going to say through prayer, most likely.
through prayer. But early on when I was a zealous teenager. And
Mm.
so I thank God for my late Bishop Gerald Glenn. Um, I was about 16 or 17. Somebody found out that I had called to preach, and they asked me to come preach somewhere, and I was excited. And so I went and told him, and he basically said, slow your roll, pump your brakes,
Mm.
be a teenager, and then go read First Samuel chapter 3.
Okay.
Because he wanted me to make sure that I heard the voice of God.
Right.
And so
I.
I didn't take the assignment. I was a bit discouraged, but then looking back on it, I appreciate him for doing that because he didn't want me to jump out into something that I wasn't ready for.
Yeah. I liken that to my own story earlier when people were telling me I should get in the pulpit. And I just I can't do, I don't say can't. We don't use can't. I can do all things, but I didn't feel qualified, and I think people were just pumping me up and all of this kind of stuff, and I was like, I'm not going to get up there and make a fool out of myself just because people think I speak well. I can speak well in a crowd of 2 or 3 people, but when you're standing in front of 40, 50, 100,000, whatever, all eyes are on you. And I think you heard me say this before. I don't want to do anything uh, to put Christians in a bad light or God in a bad light. I respect God's word and God Himself too much to do that. That's why I said, okay, this is not for me. You know,
Yeah,
but
but God, when God says you to go places, though, man, He doesn't call you to places because you're qualified. He calls you to places because you're called, and then He qualifies you as you get there. He works out everything along the way. Because truth be told, anybody that's preaching, if they say they qualified to preach, if they're not speaking about their credentials, speaking about their lifestyle, they lie. None of us are qualified. None of us, we all have sinned and fallen short of glory. We all have our issues. We all have, things and challenges that we deal with and that we face on a daily basis. So who really is qualified?
true that. I stand
But
corrected.
God has called us to certain areas to minister to people. And, you know, truth be told, the quote unquote person that seems unqualified is oftentimes much better equipped to minister than the person who we thought, you know,
Mm-hmm.
It's the one that should be qualified. I don't know why I'm flashing on the screen. Okay, I'm not flashing anymore. I didn't know if Jesus was coming or what.
Well, that's all right with me. I mean, things will get set straight. We definitely are living in a crazy world, you
That's
know,
right.
all of these different things that go on in the church, and I know I'm pretty sure you agree with me that you're not you're not into tradition. You're being led by God wholly, and somewhat breaking some of these traditions that we followed for so long. That's one of the things that I enjoy about your ministry is that you are willing to take risks, and amid a lot of controversy that's been going on around about some of these big time preachers. I won't name any names, but you know, that's something that when I was talking about going into ministry, my pastor at the time, he talked about the two things that destroy ministers are usually money and women. And so I was unmarried. He said, well, you need to get married and you need to get your money right. But being seduced, for lack of a better word, of this world, once you get elevated to a certain level, um, I think that some of these traditions can propel you in that way sometimes if you don't allow God to lead you totally and listen. And even though it doesn't sound right or it doesn't look right, at the end, he's going to make things the way they should be, or it's the outcome that he wants it to be, for lack of a better word. I'm not that good an orator. But I got one more well, I got a couple more questions. So, what advice would you offer to someone who is discerning their own call to ministry? I know you have some people in the church right now that you're grooming and training to be ministers.
Well, if people feel that they're called to the ministry, I want to give them a spiritual gift test. I push people in that direction. Just make sure that that's an area that you feel you're called in, and then we'll look at that. And I tell people to make sure that this is really what they're called to do, because being a preacher, being a pastor, a lot of people just see the stage and they don't see anything else. The stage may look glamorous, but it's not that glamorous. As a minister, the reason why we wear collars, it represents a yoke.
Okay.
And we are yoked to this gospel. We are yoked to this calling. That means we can't do things that I'll call regular people can do.
Right.
I can't wake up on Sunday and decide I'm gonna stay home and stream the service.
Right.
I got to get up and I got to go.
Got to show
because
up.
I got to show up, whether I feel like it or not. Especially as a pastor, the many times that I've had to show up and I didn't feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
My body and my mind, I didn't feel like it, but I had to show up because that's what I was called to do. That's where I was called.
Yeah, understood.
Sometimes you got to preach to people that they talk about you behind your back.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to come to that.
Uh-huh.
I think when we had our men's fellowship one time, you did correct me because I always thought the hardest thing for Christians to do, and I'm saying it wrong, but you corrected me, is to love people unlovable. And well, no one's unlovable because we're all have fallen short. But I think a better term, like what you're alluding to, is love people who are difficult, or like you say, who are backstabbers. And that old song, "Smile in your face all the time and want to take your place." The backstab. I mean, that's the part I don't see how you and other pastors are able to continue with that kind of stuff going on.
Well, I alluded to this a little bit in a message on Sunday. Jesus and Judas,
Right.
and I said, I'm not nearly as forgiving and as gracious as our Lord Jesus Christ is,
Right.
because on that Thursday night when he was betrayed by Judas, he served Judas the Last Supper, the Passover meal. He washed Judas's feet. He identified Judas as the betrayer, told him to go, what you do, go do quickly.
Mhm.
And then when Judas came to the garden to betray Jesus, Jesus called him friend.
Mm. That's deep.
Like that, right? That's deep. And so, as a pastor, dealing with difficult people like that, or people who you know don't have your best interest in mind, it is challenging and extremely difficult. But as a shepherd, as a pastor, we're called to all the sheep. We're called to pastor all the people that are there, whether we like them or not. And as long as they're there, as long as they allow us to pastor them, and that's what we're called to do. And so, it can be difficult at times. I've had some difficult ones in my short tenure as a senior pastor, had some difficult ones even as an assistant pastor. Um, but you just have to move and operate in love. And then just for me personally, I don't take things too seriously. I don't take things too personal. I don't take myself that seriously, and I don't take things too personal.
Right.
And I know I'm not called to everybody. I just understand it. I mean, a big challenge for me in my ministry has been because I'm still relatively young. I'm 36 years old.
Mhm.
75% of our church is older than me.
No doubt. I'm 61, but you know,
Yeah,
I,
you're right. You're right. So I mean, that's been a challenge in ministry for me is leading people that are older than me, and people give you grace, and then some people don't.
right. Well, I mean, I can say personally that I have no problem submitting to your authority and your leadership. Um, I've been under some other good pastors, and I think I know a good one when I see one. And I told my wife this as well. I said, we're in a good place, and we're going to stay right here. You know,
Joe, I definitely appreciate you, brother. I definitely do.
well, I just believe in giving honor to whom honor is due, sir.
Thank you,
One
sir.
more question before we go. How do you envision your ministry evolving in the future? And how does your sense of calling guide that vision?
Wow. So I believe that God, I told you that God is calling me to help people birth things out of them, to help them foster their calling. And as I continue to follow God and continue to mature, I see, our ministry personally and even our church being an incubator for people for me to pastor them and father them spiritually, mentor them, and send them to wherever God is calling them to. And so I just believe that more of that, will be birthed out of our ministry. Um, as a church, I believe our church is growing. We're in a season where we've seen some tremendous growth.
Yeah,
Um, this year alone, already we have exceeded as far as people joining and decisions for Christ. We've exceeded what we did last year in 2023, and we've only not even 3-4 months through 2024. And I just believe that as we continue to follow God through this and continue to um, just remain humble and work as He's called us to work, that there'll be things that are birthed out of us that we don't even know is there.
right.
I thank God for my wife. God gives her visions and glimpses and things, and she's seen some visions and seen some glimpses, and I just say, God, I just want to do Your will.
Yeah,
I just want to do Your will.
I'm the same way. I like, as for me and my house, we just gonna follow the Lord. We can be like Joshua, because we live in a harsh, cruel world where people don't seem like they care about each other anymore. I mean, when I was coming up, the classic thing, you didn't have to lock your doors. People greeted you. If all these kinds of things. If you were walking on the street at night, they'd pick you up and give you a ride. And we don't see those kinds of things anymore. Of course, some of this, I'm sure you can agree, is fulfillment of Bible prophecy as well. But That's why I believe that your ministry and ministries like yours are so vital, because people need to break free from some of these traditions and just worship God, like it says in the Word, in spirit and in truth. Get to the spirit of it and be truthful, and
Yeah.
don't let the world dictate how we're supposed to minister the good news to people. Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. I think you have a good point. We're in different times.
yeah,
It's different now than it was, 20, 30 years ago when I was a kid. I mean, to your
exactly.
point, I would feel comfortable. I used to walk, from my grandmother's house to the boys' club about 4 or 5 blocks. I used to walk there by myself as like a 10-year-old.
Right,
There was no problems, no
right.
issues. People in the neighborhood knew me. Everybody would look out for each other.
Hmm.
Now, I wouldn't send my 10-year-old 4 blocks down the street without.
No,
And so, we're just living in different times, but I think that makes the church more vitally important. I
agreed.
think that, we have to, as the church and as believers, we have to show people the love of Christ. We have to exercise our faith and showing people kindness, showing people love, showing people that you don't have to live in bondage, you don't have to live in sin, that there is a better way, and not throwing, like you said, church traditions at them and throwing this at them, and well, you can't wear this, and when you come out of church, make sure you look like this. There may be a place for that somewhere else, but where we are, we have to accept people, where they are,
Right.
and and fellowship and disciple them into who God has created them to be. And that's, one of the things that we rolled out at our church this year is that, we want to build disciples. We want to get people, we want to keep people, and we want to grow people. We want to help people become who God has called them to be, showing them love, showing them kindness,
Mhm.
sharing the good news of Jesus Christ without putting church tradition and doctrine down their throats.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's. I've heard many stories of people who, they go to church for a while and somebody said something to them like, "You shouldn't do this or you shouldn't wear that," and sometimes people they wear what they have. You
Right.
And even when you talked about music, I can't remember exactly when it's in a little history note, and then we're going to move on. They didn't always have music in church. There was a time
Right.
when the people came in, the minister got up, he preached the word, and they all went home. But they noticed that church attendance started to drop, and that's one of the reasons why music was added. It was to bring people back in, and now there's a lot of controversy about when I was a child. Um, that was probably the beginnings of different kinds of musical instruments. And, to one time it was the organ and the piano. That was all you had. You didn't have anything else. And now some churches have, you know, almost a full production like they're doing a show or a concert or something. And some people say, well, now you're using the devil's instruments. And I'm like, how can you make that determination? Music in and of itself is pure. But I
Yeah,
will
and
say,
they obviously haven't read Psalms 150.
right. But I will say that, like you said in the past about guarding your gates, certain music, okay, you need to leave that alone. Like some of the other things, the things that we look at, the things that we hear, the things that we read, all of these things. But at the crux of it is, I feel the same way you do, is that we show people love, meet them where they are, and give them the tools to become better. You know,
Right.
yeah. Well, Pastor, I appreciate you coming on with us.
Absolutely.
I know this is Holy Week, and guys, we want to invite you to come to Mount Calvary Church of Winston-Salem for Resurrection Sunday. It's going to be a service that I think this man is a prolific speaker. He's dynamic. You would do yourself a disservice by staying at home. So come on out and worship with us. And we will be glad to show you a little love along the way. Well, Pastor, I appreciate you. Is there anything else you want to say before we drop off here? We're going to end the same way we did with a little music.
I just appreciate you having me on, man. And again, all who are watching this, who will view this, come on out. We would love to have you at Mount Calvary, 930 East 14th Street in Winston-Salem. We are a place where I say this: God lives there. We're a place of love. We're a place of kindness. We believe we're a strong church, strong in faith, family, and community. And we'd love to have you a part. Come check us out. If whether you're trying to get to know Jesus, new to faith, have walked away and want to come back in, or just looking for, some place to come and worship, we love to have you. So come on out. Sundays, 10 a.m.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, guys, that's going to end our broadcast. Remember, we're on every Monday at 7 p.m. If you like the content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's JL the Anti-Guru. And remember my 3 R's. Respect yourself, respect others, and always, always take full responsibility for your actions. We love you. Later.